So, good afternoon. Thank you all so much for being here. As you can see, I'm joined, thank you. I'm joined by members of my public safety team, particularly Superintendent Shaun Ferguson, Deputy Chief Goodley, of course, representatives from our New Orleans City Council, in addition to leadership of our New Orleans Police and Justice Foundation, as well as our Director Chief of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness, joined by my CAO, Gilbert Montano, and you will hear from other members following me. And of course, as we do, we will go to Q&A after we have shared information that we have come to share on this afternoon. On July the 28th, I made a decision based on, in that particular week, the number of separations that we had gotten in a week, along with hearing directly from officers how they were feeling about the overall environment of policing in our city. On the 28th, I then began with Superintendent Shaun Ferguson, participating and attending every single roll call at every single district throughout our city, listening directly to the men and women of the New Orleans Police Department in terms of, one, wanting to, of course, stop separations, but focus very heavily on retention, as well as knowing recruitment as well, being a priority. Listening to the men and women of the New Orleans Police Department quickly gave us some immediate next steps, things that we can present to make some changes, while also moving forward with a thorough analysis and inside approach of our department from top to bottom, bottom to top. I engaged John Linder along with former Chief Fausto Pichardo, as well as Assistant Chief Thomas Conforti, and both who were in the city of New Orleans and with us for over a 2-week period. My directive was to analyze our department again from top to bottom. I didn't want it to be a long, drawn-out process. I wanted them to present me with recommendations in terms of operations so that, again, we can move in a direction that will ensure that we have cops that continue to remain connected to the New Orleans Police Department, as well as ensure that we're a department definitely advancing recruitment practices in our city. A 10-day scan was done, as I mentioned, and recommendations therefore then came to me along with Superintendent Shaun Ferguson. And every step of the way, our department leadership was engaged and has been engaged. But receiving that document and those recommendations, we immediately then pivoted to implementation. And so looking at areas that were embedded in the document is why we are here this afternoon to unveil changes that will be made as it relates to what we heard on our listening tour and things that we know that we can do as a city to improve the conditions that our officers are working in, but also ensuring that our officers, the men and women of the New Orleans Police Department, our platoons, when they're out there protecting and serving, that they're also protected as well. Safer cops makes a way for this city to be safer. And so, on today, we will be doing a number of things as it relates to deployment. And you're going to hear more from the superintendent. You're going to hear more from our Fausto, our consultant, and you will hear even more from the support that is here with me. And even more details you will get from Gilbert Montano, just kind of taking you to some of the meat and potatoes to what we are unveiling this afternoon. We know that everyone across the entire country is experiencing staffing shortages relative to policing, so it's not immune to the city of New Orleans. But this requires us to do things differently and create force multipliers within our city, but more importantly, make sure that every officer that is commissioned in our city is available to patrol. And so what we will be doing, starting immediately, we have non-patrol special operations and investigative duties will immediately be reassigned to patrol duties in uniform across the city of New Orleans. Don't ask us for the full complement in terms of which numbers will be where, because we're not sharing that. We want to make sure we're not tipping off our criminals. We're wanting to ensure that our officers that are in our platoon will have more officers there to support them while they protect and serve the streets of New Orleans. So, again, immediately reassignments will be happening to ensure that we give our officers the level of support that they need and the level of support that they've indicated that they definitely not only need, but they desire. Another thing that I heard was around PIB, and particularly since being placed under consent decree, and we know when that started, and you've heard me talk about that. The NOPD, no doubt about it, has been transformed into a world-class police department that I've always said that is second to none, and that we continue to be leaders in and throughout the United States of America relative to constitutional policing practices. But we also recognize, and hearing directly from our officers, that they've explained particularly that the levels of that, in terms of a certain degree, it has required officers to spend a little bit more of their time explaining why they took a specific action that they felt was necessary while they were on the streets protecting and serving. This has just caused an added burden to our officers. And so with that, we're wanting to make sure that we reorganize and restructure as necessary relative to policies and practices within PIB, and I have therefore chosen new leadership of PIB that is rightly aligned with the changes that we know we want to have made. And as a result of that, I am announcing Keith Sanchez as the new head of PIB for the city of New Orleans and the New Orleans Police Department. Now, we are no way throwing out the baby with the bathwater, and that means the former leadership of PIB. The former leadership of PIB, Chief Westbrook, has been reassigned. Her work on the ground within PIB has garnered support from our federal judge as it relates to our consent decree. The priority also still remains ensuring that we get to full compliance within that consent decree. I have reassigned Ms. Westbrook. She will be in the CAO's office, primarily focusing on the consent decree, because we want to make sure we're moving steadily in the right direction to ensure compliance. So that work will continue, and advancing the work that we know is happening on the ground within the New Orleans Police Department, communicating effectively not only with our judge but also with DOJ. You know that we issued the motion to terminate to the DOJ. So we're working through that process, and we're wanting to make sure that we have continuity in experience and leadership in dealing with our consent decree. So that will be the reassignment of Chief Westbrook. CAO's office, and the CAO's office, which this makes total sense, has been even more engaged relative to the consent decree. So having Ms. Westbrook in the CAO, in the CAO's office, again, makes great sense, and it's better alignment and keeps our focus heavily on compliance of the consent decree. Recruitment. Recruitment, you know, I've always said retention as well as recruitment. You know that nationally, again, just like the city of New Orleans, you know, the issues relative to the stigma around the profession has had a real impact on hiring. Again, departments, hiring practices across the country, we're no different. But we're wanting to make sure that we do the best we can in our city to attract men and women to come join the New Orleans Police Department. And so to place NOPD ahead of that national curve while remaining fiscally responsible, we're going to be implementing several components. And I'll share a few. Gilbert will break them down even further. Enhanced financial incentives for both new recruits as well as existing officers. It was a priority for this team to ensure that we reached parity. When we're talking about new recruits, our officers joining, we wanted to again make sure that our officers that have been on the ground protecting and serving our community feel like that they're again aligned with new recruits coming onto the force. And so with that, enhanced financial incentives for new recruits, but also in addition to existing officers that will be expanded upon the retention package that we recently got passed by the Civil Service Commission as well as the New Orleans City Council. So this is what I'm talking about, is above and beyond. We're also moving forward with 100% coverage of health insurance. This was another matter that came up in listening to our officers as a real incentive for them. So no cost health coverage for our officers, but also, as I tell our officers and I tell their families, when one person serves, the entire family serves as well, serves this city. So when we talk about no cost, 100% coverage, this will also be extended to their entire family. And this can come, again, at a $6,500 to a $9,500 cost savings to that particular officer. So that is getting the bear out of their pocket and the money staying in their pocket. Making overtime pensionable. This also came, again, from the listening tour, I would call it, from roll call. So this is something low-hanging fruit, but we're moving forward with it. We do agree that this is definitely in line and something that our officers do deserve. In addition to that, you're going to hear definitely about whether it's lateral moves. You'll hear more about that. You're going to hear about current officers relative to cost of living adjustments as well. And I also just wanted to take a note or a moment when I talk about the health care. I've asked that we also extend that health care component to EMS as well as fire, because as we're focusing very heavily on NOPD, and of course I look at public safety across the board, but with this and looking at that 100% in terms of no cost or coverage that we will take care of, we're going to provide that again to EMS and fire. There are many other changes that I wanted the superintendent to share with you directly, and so I'm going to ask Superintendent Shaun Ferguson to come forward, share more. You're going to hear also from our consultant, Fausto Pichardo. You're also going to hear from other leadership as well. So with that, Superintendent, you want to come and give a little bit more, put a little bit more meat on the bone, and then we'll move forward.
Thank you.
And thank you all for your patience.
Yep.
I know it's a lot, but it's worth it.
Yep, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Mayor, for your support, the CEO, and everyone up here. I mean, Today is a great day, a great opportunity for us as a department. And these initiatives that you just spoke to is just another example of your true unwavering support to public safety. And for that, we are truly, truly grateful, ma'am. So in an effort to provide a great working environment for our officers as well as a great living environment for our citizens, we'll continue to assess our department's status on a daily basis to better address violent crime. We began this assessment, of course, earlier this year, and that is how we got to the 12-hour shift. We then followed up with the 10-day assessment by Chief Fausto Pichardo. In his meetings with our leadership, in his meetings with our teams, he learned our operational procedures and identified many opportunities similar to what we learned before, and it kind of reaffirmed what we were already looking at. But to have those outside eyes looking within, it also can create an opportunity to see some things that may have been hidden within plain sight. So Pichardo will be with us at least for the next 6 months to help us implement some of these changes that we've identified, and he will be speaking to those in a few. Some of these things, or some of these changes which we will be implementing with, like the mayor said, immediately, one is already in place, and that is the 12-hour shift. You know, we did the 12-hour pilot program throughout the summer, and now we're going to continue on with that. I think we're just in a position where we have to remain consistent with that, especially given some of the challenges that we're facing staffing-wise. But the next thing is our redeployment strategy. So in keeping with the vision of creating a safer environment for our officers and creating a safer environment for our community, what you will see is some of our district personnel, administrative personnel, will be put into a patrol capacity. You will see some of our standby units, such as K9 and traffic, will now be in a deployment strategy or deployment status as well. And you will also see some of our bureaus, our support bureaus, meaning investigators from investigations, PIB, PSAB, as well as MSB, those various assignments. You will see them out in the field as well. Everyone having some sort of ownership in fighting crime and making our city safer. So shifting the duties of personnel will be done to utilize them in the best way possible. As the mayor said, we will not speak to any numbers, but just know you will see an increased presence in every community throughout the city of New Orleans. And I must admit, this will be somewhat uncomfortable to some of our officers. That is, you know, it is a change. Change is difficult. Human nature is just difficult at times. But I am a firm believer our officers are remaining dedicated and committed to their oath, and they will adjust to the change just as they did at the beginning of this summer with the 12-hour shift. So all of these changes will include the same team members, and even shifting from this deployment side of things, as the mayor spoke to with regards to PIB. The consent decree is still a priority of the New Orleans Police Department, and we must stay focused on that, and we need that support to remain focused on that. And Chief Westbrook is the most experienced and the most knowledgeable person when it comes to the consent decree within the New Orleans Police Department. She has worked tirelessly to earn the respect and have the integrity that she has of the DOJ, the judge, the monitors, as well as our community. So I want to thank you, Chief Westbrook, for assuming this new responsibility in this role to still be a support of the New Orleans Police Department, to continue to be a support of this city of New Orleans. And as the mayor has said, we will now have a new deputy chief over the Public Intergrity Bureau, and that is Attorney Keith Sanchez. He is currently the legal aspects instructor or director at our academy. He is a former New Orleans police officer. He is a legal, has been a legal representative for officers throughout the disciplinary process. So he's very familiar with this process, and he understands the ins and out of this process. So I think all of this it's no different than taking a running back and putting them in a slot position. We still have our same team players, and we're still in this fight together, just assuming different roles and responsibilities. So this, I think, is definitely going to be an asset to our department as we move forward. But this, again, is about utilizing our available resources in the roles that would best serve the department. And before I ask Mr. Pichardo to come and say a few words as to what his support role is to me, myself, and to this department, I want to just remind everyone that what we have here today, what we will be implementing, will essentially be a force multiplier for the hard work that our officers are already doing. This is an exciting time for me personally. I think this is an exciting time for the members of the New Orleans Police Department. And we will need everyone to work together, from our city council members that are here with us, to our business community leaders, to our faith-based leaders, to those informal leaders throughout the community. We cannot do it without you. We need your support, and we would need everything that we can, all hands on deck, to help execute this. So with that, I will ask that Mr. Pichardo come forward and be introduced to the city of New Orleans, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chief Pichardo.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for your leadership, and certainly Superintendent Ferguson for the warm welcome and all of the support he's given me this far. You know, a few weeks ago, I came down to New Orleans and had the opportunity to witness something that in my close to 25 years of law enforcement experience, I never witnessed before. I saw the mayor standing in front of a room of officers to listen to their thoughts, ideas, and concerns. I witnessed firsthand how she stood there and opened up the floor to everyone and anyone that wanted to ask a question, make a statement, or share an idea. And it was clear that nothing was off limits. And as I stand before you today, that sight and that image, as a former police officer, I get goosebumps. The officers she demanded speak freely, something that, again, I never witnessed, and saw something that was strongly encouraged. And right next to her, Superintendent Ferguson, with humility and compassion for the men and women of the NOPD, stood strong. And as I saw the many dedicated men and women of the NOPD standing in that room, I knew that special things were happening in this department and in this city. And from that day, I knew that I wanted to be part of all the great things that are happening in New Orleans, and especially to do whatever I could in any capacity to help keep the men and women of the NOPD safe, and certainly the people and the residents of New Orleans. Madam Mayor?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And it has just truly been just a breath of fresh air working with you and seeing how you come with the utmost respect for the men and women of the New Orleans Police Department, and also knowing that our focus is on the people of the city of New Orleans and our visitors as well. I'm going to ask now a man who has been a real partner in this endeavor, along with his colleagues with the New Orleans Police and Justice Foundation. I appreciate you, Ms. Bowe. And Mr. Dara, I saw, where did Dara go? Thank you so much for your leadership as well, and leaning in and having meetings, you know, with me to get us to this point. But John Casbon stepped up, and he stepped up with resources as well, that therefore allowed me to engage John Linder, that allowed me in the city to engage Pichardo. And so I want to say thank you so much, John, for your dedication and your commitment, but also being a partner, because look, the best is yet to come, and we're just getting started. But we're going to have a robust even a recruitment and marketing campaign, as well as we continue to look at the overall operations. But let me ask Mr. John Casbon to come and speak at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank you.
Thank you.
And the business community wants to also thank you. You know, you were part of the Pennington plan, and most people don't realize that. you go way back with this. You saw how the sausage was made then and how we're going to do it today. And the support that you've given the police department is, I don't know of another mayor across this country, they may be out there, but I don't know of anyone who's standing by their police department like this is. She is unbelievable, steadfast, pushing this entire project. And this next person I want to thank, where is it, Chief? Right behind. Chief, this is tough medicine to bring consultants in. In business, we do it all the time. But to have people come in and take a second and third look at your operations is not easy. And I want to thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you.
And adopting and endorsing Fausto, because it's important that we all get along, we understand what we're doing, we have a mission, and we got to complete it. So this is huge, what has transpired. It reminds me of the old days. But these are new times, and with a new mayor who is steadfast on making sure that everybody's safe. Nobody until everybody is safe. And that's exactly what we're going to put together. So I'm thrilled, and I'm going to ask the business community to step up now, like they did early on. The Business Council, the coalition, everybody who's out there, this is the time. You know, the Saints, when they dress out and go on the field, they go to win. The Pelicans do the same thing, but there's another team out there. They put their uniform on too. They put all their paraphernalia on, the service revolver, and they go out every day. We have another team to back, and we're going to do it. Remember something, that Katrina almost wiped us completely off the map. What did we do? We came back with vengeance. We came back as a unified front. Ida, we couldn't even get rid of. It hung around forever. We came back and we made it into a beautiful thing. This department deserves the absolute best. That's why we're hiring the people we're hiring and why we can do this. Every expert I talk to says that this can be done and done well like we did it before. You've got to believe. And I'm asking the public something. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of people upset about a lot of things. Hit the reset button and let's get behind the badge. Let's put our priorities where they belong and support the effort that we're about to do. It's monumental. It's important. I've got two particular jobs that I work on. Retention of our police officers, but I have another one. The retention of our citizens. We got to make sure that people don't leave, and they got to have hope. And we're going to give it to them in big doses. After this press conference, people are going to start to see that there's something really different going on here. And we're going to prove it. In those days with Pennington, the police started shining their badges. They wore their uniform. They drove marked cars. And they had the public picking up their breakfast when they saw them, waving to them. Let's pick it up. Let's go for it and make sure that we support the mayor on this effort, because it's extremely important that we have the support there, that we support our Chief Ferguson and the consultants that we are bringing in to make sure that we can make an advancement in how we operate today. So I'm just so proud of everybody. It's time to rise. It's time to forget about all this other stuff that's going on and all the noise and think about one thing only. Our police department needs love, care, commitment, and money. We're gonna spend some money. I did before, and I'm going to do it again. I'm going to hire the best people that are out there, because that's what this department deserves. And with that, Mayor,
Well, we're aligned.
Congratulations.
We're aligned because we are going to be proposing even some additional revenue adjustments to make sure that we fund
that's great.
everything that we're proposing. And so at this time, I'm going to ask
That doesn't mean you get a raise yet, you know.
Well, some do. But what I will say, this is a great time to bring up Gilbert Montano, our CAO, that will just walk you through the complements of what we are proposing and what we will be enacting.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members of the community, council members, leadership. Once again, Mayor, you're letting us do our job, so thank you. I think we're able to have thoughtfully put together a financial package that we consider as one of the most bold in the entire country as it relates to our officers, both on the recruitment and the retention strategy. Before I dive into the details, and I assume and plan that you all get a copy of my presentation, the fiscal integrity of the organization is strong. It's sound. It's something we have dedicated 5 years to rebuilding, establishing, and the structural integrity is something that if we did not feel as an administration sound enough to propose these, we wouldn't. We are able to stay fiscally secure as we roll out these initiatives, and in no way will we be in any kind of concern, I feel, financially for the years that we're moving forward because of a lot of structural changes we've made over the course of time and the implementation of our ARP funds. So I'll dive into, this is not lengthy, but it's a little longer because it does have some details, but obviously address any questions you have. We're looking at three types of officers. We're looking at the recruits, we're looking at laterals, and we're looking at our existing officers. And in transparency, we did have conversations with the unions and roll and have conversations to help build this package so that we had both equity with our existing officers and those that we're trying to attract. In transparency, the mayor directed us to speak with all city councilors and give them a heads up on what we're proposing, and so we had some good dialogue with all the members of the city council as well. I know there's a government affairs meeting, otherwise some I know would be attending as well. Essentially, it is a package that will embrace a $30,000 hiring bonus for all new recruits and all new laterals, and that is to be paid 1 year after completion of the academy. We are increasing the salaries. We had originally proposed a 5% increase plus a 2.5 for other employees. In previous budget cycles, we're proposing a 5% increase each of the next 3 years for a little culmination of an additional 15%. This is for our recruits, and then I'm going to go to each other thereafter. As the mayor alluded, we're going to address a fully funded healthcare system. Of the 30,000, 20,000 will be paid after the first year of completion. The next 10,000 would be paid after the third year. We want a commitment from these officers. We want to make sure that they're embracing the culture of our leadership, and as all the speakers have previously said, we have confidence that they're going to be able to succeed in that environment. Secondly, laterals. This is an important subject. These are officers that are going to be coming, we hope, from other agencies throughout the country, the region, and the like, and we feel the incentive of $30,000 will entice that commitment to the NOPD. Similarly, it'll be $20,000 after the first year of training, and then $10,000 thereafter, equal to the 5, 5, and 5, the little over 15% raise over the next 3 years, and the fully funded health care insurance. And I'll give you how much all this is going to cost at the end, because I'm sure you're curious on that. But in conversations with the unions, we realized and we took to heart, and certainly our leadership and you know, Director Thomas was right there at the helm when we were having these discussions, is that we didn't want an existing officer, say 5, 6, 7 years, to be making less than what a new recruit would make year one. So we wanted to offer a parity. It was important for us to establish that. So they too will be receiving, and we are proposing, and I want to make sure that I premise that this is subject to civil service approval and city council approval. So I'll be sending a letter to the civil service today asking to be on the agenda, and we'll go down that path, and then thereafter to the city council. They would be receiving and eligible for the $10,000 retention incentive after year 3. Previously, as you remember, the mayor had rolled out a larger retention package that was approximately $12.5 million that would pay up to $20,000 per officer and then $5,000 each of the next 5 years. This is on top, as the mayor said, of that an additional $10,000. I'm going to just harken back to the fiscal soundness of the organization, because this sounds like a lot of money and a lot of dollars, but we're once again looking at this as an investment. Without a safe, habitable city, what good is a strong fund balance? So we want to make sure that we are balancing the needs of the residents as well as maintaining the fiscal integrity of the office. And they also, to our existing officers, if you realize in March they're going to be having the larger lump sum payment, the catch-up payment, so some officers would be receiving up to $20,000. They would also be qualified for those next 5%, 5%, 5% raises, and then, of course, the fully funded health care plan. Additional benefits that we are working on, because of some supply chain issues, we can't make them happen, but we're directed and absolutely invested in bringing back the take-home vehicle policy. We think this is an important aspect for our officers. Presence amongst the community is going to be vital. There are some parameters related to that, but prior for us getting there, I'm going to have to, in conjunction with the mayor and the council, purchase about 600 more police cars. It's substantial. There's been long years of lack of investment in equipment, and I know that's been our song for many, many years, but now it's absolutely part of the package that we're going to be selling and marketing to our future officers and our existing officers as an important perk, both for presence and opportunity. It's clear, and we've heard from the officers, both from the chief and the mayor, that the conditions is almost as important as the pay. Very significant role from our office and the budget office to start addressing IT maintenance, IT establishment, facilities, cars, equipment, office supplies, and all the repairs necessary. Professionalizing those whole different areas within police environments so that police officers can do police work and administrators can do administrative work. And we're going to really try our best to provide as much support and handling of those processes so that we can get them better in line so that the officers can come to a work that they feel safe in, and it's a professional area that's upgraded and standard for what we're asking them to do on a given day. Couple more things that are going to be later rolled out as they're more fully developed, but at the direction of the mayor, we want to make sure that we at least mention them. We're evaluating, and along with the city council, a lot of the calls, they want to be actively engaged in this, an education incentive package, meaning that a progressive opportunity for officers to further their education or a loan payback program should they have student loan debt. Relocation assistance for those laterals that need a relocation assistance to come into the city of New Orleans. That's an important piece for them to make that decision. Rental assistance. I think rental assistance, we want to incentivize our officers to live within New Orleans. We know New Orleans is an expensive city to live in, and having some period of time for rental assistance is also something the mayor has directed the team to address.
And that's all officers, not just recruits.
And as the mayor mentioned earlier, the pensionable piece, we're going to have to lobby at the state to get that accomplished, and that's something we're committed to do so that we can make overtime pensionable as well. We have a whole list of things we would like to address with the state legislature, and that is certainly on top of the list as well. And lastly, and in closing, before I hand it back to the mayor, we know that just throwing money at this issue is not the solution. I think you heard previously there are many different methods to making a successful police department. And the last part, as more will come rolling out, is the civilianization of many different pieces and the force multipliers associated with it, whether that be civilian response to accidents in lieu of an officer, whether that's the alternative dispatch program to direct mental health professionals in lieu of an officer, or spending more assets and resources in our real-time crime center so that we can better handle crimes as they move forward or being investigated. And then lastly, the deputization of quality of life. A lot of these programs are launched and ongoing. Some need the kickstart, and that's what we're committed to do. Within the packet that should be handed out to you, and so that you know we weren't arbitrary, we did a regional comparison for recruit pay, and then a national comparison for overall pay. And with the exception of based on our research, and like I said, nothing is perfect, I believe only Seattle may beat us on our package that we're offering officers right now. We want it to be bold. We want it to surpass significantly as it relates to what we want to attract and what we'd like to grow. And we're confident in the investment. And thank you again, Mayor, for letting us present you with this plan and move forward and execute.
No, thank you, Gilbert, and hopefully you have a better understanding of how focused we are and on the work that has been going on to get us to this day, but also our commitment to implementation. You know, plan is only as good as its implementation, and we're committed to seeing it through for the long haul. Relative to any alignment with the September 15th, I know we're going to the City Council. We expect mid-year budget adjustments to happen at that time. And then in October, we'll be prepared to go to the New Orleans City Council for appropriation of our American Rescue Plan dollars that's also attached to the package that we are presenting to you this afternoon. So with that, that really completes what we're wanting to share with you on this afternoon. We'll continue to come back and give you updates and more meat on the bone as we move through. But at this time, I'll ask John if you want to move us through questions and answers. And of course, we're all here at your disposal.
Again, no off topic, so we'll take just a few, so make it count. Next, please.
Gilbert, I think you said you were gonna say this, so I'll ask it. How much is this all gonna cost?
Oh, yeah,
Where's the money
the
coming
bottom
from?
line, well, some of those packages, yeah.
I did remiss. My apologies. That is a big, important part of it. So let me start with the cost breakdown, and then I'll give you the strategy of payment plan for it. So I'm going to talk, and remember, I want to be highlighted, and you'll see it in the presentation. We're really looking at a 3-year plan. This is based on a 3-year strategy. I think it's important after 3 years to have a reassessment, both where you are with the amount of officers, and more importantly, where you are on the revenue stream. If I was to buy, including the police cars, this is close to an $80 million package in total for the next 3 years. So not $80 million each year, but $80 million in aggregate. The recruitment incentive is $6 million. And I capped that number at 200 officers because I wanted a denominator with a numerator. So that is 200 officers, presumably. If we get more, let's add more money to the bucket, essentially. But you have to have some sort of baseline. So that's based on 200 additional officers. The incentive, the recruitment incentive program for existing officers, big price tag, $9.5 million. That's based on 950 officers at 10,000 third year, which was important to feel the parity aspect for our existing officers. Remember the existing recruitment, the proposal that we had put back, the mayor had put back over the course of the last several months, $12 million. The healthcare piece. This is a substantial cost over 3 years. The numbers I have here are only for police, only for police. I know the mayor had said EMS and fire, but these numbers only reflect police, and it's about $21.6 million cost to the city, significant investment. Vehicles, about $25 million. And as far as technology, this will be an ongoing cost that right now will be, I would estimate, close to $2 million, but there are other things before we've even uncovered some of the things behind the curtain. So of that, with the exception of about $5 million is going to be used as one-time money. So we'll package it through our ARP dollars. It is one of the qualifier aspects. Remember, ARP Tranche 1 we use for lost revenue. We projected the budget over the next 3 years. Now we'll use this tranche under the qualified expenses of public safety, and we will propose it to the City Council. We realize, as I said prior, that some things take priority of others given a period of time. So we're not being myopic to assume that it only should go to public safety. We know there's a lot of needs in the city, but right now this is a top priority, and we're ensuring that we have opportunities to fund it thereafter. And then the other pieces we hope that will hopefully match during our revenue coming back relative to the health care and the things of that nature. I hope that answers those questions.
Any more questions? WVNO and the NWD issue.
My question is for Chief Ferguson. You know, you're talking about moving folks around within the department to make sure there's more boots on the ground. Can you tell me a little bit about what specific tactics is the NOPD using to make sure that we're boosting, you know, public safety by using folks that are being reassigned?
So the officers that are being reassigned, how we're using them is what your question is?
Yeah, what tactics is the NOPD using?
Oh, from this plan, I understand what you're saying. So what we're doing is we're going to be adding them to the patrol capacity. They're going to be in a patrol capacity. The goal of this is to actually have a quicker response time when our citizens call for assistance, to also increase visibility throughout the community as well. So you're going to see a transition of administrative positions, administrative officers, as well as some investigators that will be in more of a patrol capacity, which will give us the opportunity to have these both accomplished.
Yeah, calls for service.
That's what it's all about.
Supporting our platoon.
And supporting the officers, yes.
Who are on the street, yes.
My question is for Fausto Pichardo. First, welcome to New Orleans.
Fausto.
What is your role? How do you see your role specifically in helping implement some of these new changes, as well as your priorities as you take on this new role within NOPD?
Sure, thank you for that question, and it's quite simple. I am here in a support capacity in any way, shape, or form that the superintendent needs. I've been here a number of days already, and there has not gone a day where the superintendent and I have not met, texted, or talked. And whatever tasks he has delineated for me to take a look at, it is exactly what I will do in depth, report those findings to him, and ultimately the superintendent will have a say in exactly what he wants to do.
Thank you.
Foxy and the WWL.
I hate to hamper on the point, but can you explain basically, so are we talking about reassigning homicide detectives, property crime detectives? Are they gonna be on patrol every day? It's not really asking about the numbers, just, you know, what the nature.
Yes, I mean, the goal is actually, giving everyone a bite at the apple. I mean, yes, homicide investigators will be tasked at least once a month, one day a month, to go out on patrol and support where they are needed at that time. But definitely not to take away from their primary responsibilities. However, supporting our officers who are in the field and are running from call to call to call to ensure that when they are calling for backup, there is someone to respond for their assistance as well. Everybody, everyone, administrative positions, every position that you can think of in a commission capacity will be operating.
Everyone 1 day a month?
In some aspects, yes. In some capacities, we're actually going to be redeploying or shifting some of our personnel to patrol for temporarily until we get through all of this and start building up again.
So it varies.
So just to get a clarification from you on the total number of new officers, that is your goal. You mentioned a bold move to get up to 600 new officers, but then you said the funding is for 200 new recruits.
600 vehicles.
So which is
He
it?
said 600 vehicles.
600
The
vehicles.
vehicles,
200 new officers?
yes.
Over 3 years.
And the
Over
200
what
deliver.
period of time, because we've seen in, recent recruit classes, the classes haven't come close to that number, and I know that the consent decree does restrict how many you can have in the academy at one time. So how do you plan to get to that 200?
Well, the last several classes have been our lowest, our last several. And we believe that with the package that we're presenting on today, that we will see our numbers increase, much like we have been able to graduate classes since I've been mayor, over 13, 14 classes. But also understanding that working with our judge, that we have been able to get the concessions necessary to bolster up or boost up the number of recruits that we can train at any given time. So we believe that the 200 number is a good complement to that. And if that increases, we will make the necessary adjustments needed to pay for it.
Last question. Yeah.
Sure. $80 million is a lot of money. A lot of this is one-time money from the federal government. Why is it better spent on NOPD than other priorities like economic development?
Well, because First of all, we know that public safety remains our top priority. We believe that with this one-time money, and thank God I fought for it almost single-handedly so that the city of New Orleans could get that direct allocation. This is the best use of one-time money, quite frankly, when you're talking about retention as well as recruitment packages. Absolutely looking to being conservative, as we look at 23, 24, and 25. But as we look at revenue bouncing back with recurring expenses, we do believe that we will not incur a structural deficit, that we will remain fiscally sound and stable. Sure, absolutely.
Thank you, Mayor. Just let me add a little bit of that. Remember, this is the total. $388 million it was the total ARP fund. So the $80 million is not as large of a magnitude when you look at it in comparison to 388. Significant, I totally agree, and a priority. But when you start breaking down that $80 million, if there's ways for us to contort, say, police cars under our capital program, I'm going to shift that out of ARP. If we don't get an officer, they don't get an incentive pay, right? So that money won't be spent. That's only when we actually get officers in the door. And if this program doesn't work, we'll have to readjust and reevaluate as well. So this is not concrete. We always have to stay agile. We said at our recruitment or our retention piece, this is going to be one piece. There may be other pieces down the road, but to echo the mayor's statements, the investment in public safety right now is tantamount to ensure economic development projects can keep going forward so that we can ensure more residents are coming and attracted to the city and the like. So we do feel as an administration, and from what I heard from the council in the conversations yesterday, that this is an ultimate priority and good use for those ARP dollars.
Absolutely. And it's one of the reasons also, I can't remain silent on the $70 million that the city was not reimbursed for fighting COVID-19 that had a direct impact on public safety functions. Casmine, what you got?
Yes, I'd like to just say one thing about economic development and public safety are handcuffed together. You cannot have one without the other. Think of that and realize that the money we're going to spend here will create economic development. I just want to make that point because it's very important.
In the 90s, the business community put up a program with the Chevron program to hire 1,900 youth.
That's right.
There's so much we forget about this. There are only a few people in the room that remember it. Pearlstein, myself, and John Casbah. Chief Pennington, the Pennington plan was here the first several months trying to learn to do the job. People forget that after he was here, those few months after he got here, then Maple and Linder and other law enforcement consultants came to the city after that. We had the broken windows plan from Linder. In Maple, the law of crime concentration plan. The federal government put $1 million into weed and seed. You had the conflict resolution task force. The North budget was doubled. And then the media played a role. Pearl, you remember the town hall meetings that the stations didn't just focus on who got killed. The media outlets had town halls and panel discussions in the hot spots where people were being killed. So it was a commitment on their part, Mayor, not just to blame the leaders of what they're going to do with crime. Go look at your archives. You guys actually set up town halls and panel discussions in hot spots where people were being murdered. Guess what resulted in that? A 60% reduction in violent crime, double the national average. Murder rate went from 424 to 159. Everybody plays a role. You guys can continue to report on what we're not doing, but if you look at your archives, one of the greatest success part of that period was the media outlets saying, we have a commitment to this too. Actually in the community, reporting, sponsoring town halls, sponsoring panel discussions, and getting people to come forward.
And then when you look at the current operations and opportunities that the city of New Orleans is providing through NORD, through our public libraries, it really goes on and on through Pathways. It's so many different organizations that we are supporting that are boots on the ground. Over $40 million this city invests in our young people, invests in families. And it is definitely aligned with what the councilman has just mentioned. So with that, thank you very much.
You were there, Pearl.